The AFR exposes Australia's dirty power structure. Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hi, mate. How you going?
Very interesting. Been a couple of interesting days.
Indeed. The AFR have come after us this week. You had your turn last week about the quality of your analysis, and this week it's you and I on page 37 of today's edition saying that we are engaged in pushing extreme conspiracy theories and links to global anti-Semitic writers, and trying to paint us as neo-Nazis and all of that sort of stuff. So it really sort of says a lot about what we're doing here, how our audience responds, and how the establishment is responding in return.
Yeah, well, let's get one thing clear. Beige shirt, okay, deliberately so, because, of course, last week the AFR attacked me for wearing this sort of stuff and taking a bag to a meeting rather than anything else. So, I mean, it's just so superficial, right? But I think the one this time was about the cash ban and connected with the cash ban. And you can see that people are running scared because we're having a significant impact, and I guess Rob is from the CC's part of that too, but we're having a significant impact in raising some really, really important issues, right? Grounded in fact,
yep.
Grounded in analysis. So this is nothing to do with bullshit. This is nothing to do with, a right-wing agenda or anything like that. This is simply and truthfully about what is going on with regard to the cash ban.
Precisely. And there are huge forces at play who want this legislation in place. From the government, I would say elements of the opposition, the RBA, the commercial banks. And again, is there a conspiracy? To be honest, there is a conspiracy. The conspiracy is negative interest rates. We quoted the IMF. We quoted a whole bunch of other technical international papers that said that. So did the Aaron Patrick from the AFR today give any credence to any of those sources or references? No. This was a smear campaign trying to discredit us, trying to discredit anyone who watches us, but also it's a mechanism to kill debate in Parliament. And then I have spoken to people in Parliament about this article and what the impact of this article will be. But I just want to start by saying, so today's Friday, I had first communication with the journalist, or so-called, I call him a propagandist because this is not journalism, on Monday. And I had an email with a series of questions about our involvement, my involvement with you, our involvement with the CC in terms of this issue. How did it come that the ABC and the Australians started talking about this topic in their publications, etc. And so I was in Adelaide on the day. I got a email. I was able to get the journalist's phone number. I called. He wouldn't take my phone call. I sent him a text. He then came back to me and says, we must keep all communication in written form. And as soon as he said that, I knew it was a hit job. Why? Because once you get on the phone with someone, it's he said, a dispute about facts, and he needed everything to be in writing. And so obviously he then started to proceed to ask me things like, are you a member of the CEC? I said, no, I'm not. I quit the Liberal Party in 2016 and I've been independent since then. And then in the days that follows, it was all about how can you connect Adams with the CEC? Are you an associate of the CEC? Well, what does that mean? I mean, I'm not an associate. I'm completely independent. And you saw my lengthy response to the AFR, which I shared with you. I mean, no one controls the content that we put together. It's a joint collaboration between you and I. So there's no commercial interest, there's no political interest. And one of the other things that this article was saying was that the CEC is effectively using us as a cover to push their agenda. Well, the funny thing is, and Robbie knows this, and I spoke to Robbie today about this. The CEC report, their show, which I've been on, has on many occasions in the last 12 months referenced this show and our episodes from Walk the World last year. We've never spoken about the CEC like either their publication or their TV show wants. So no, the CC is following us, and we are setting the agenda. And again, any claim that the CC are using us, no, that's far from the case. So very very interesting sort of attack that they pursued here. And again, the thing is, like the whole thing was a complete stitch up. And it was obvious from the people who read it and the feedback I got throughout the day that there was no quality analysis in this piece by Aaron Patrick.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've had a lot of feedback, both from last week's and this week's exposure, right, from people who follow us and know us. And what's interesting is that basically all of them are very supportive of what we've been doing, right, and our approach, which is analytically driven, right, built on information that's publicly available, right, and being able to actually weave a story around it which informs people as to what's going on. And the message has been overwhelmingly, keep going, guys, keep going, this is really, really important. And my message has been water off a duck's back, as far as I'm concerned, right, because we know that we've got right on our side here.
Indeed. But one of the things I really want to emphasise in this particular discussion is what I call the real power structure. So I mean, there has been this debate among our audience, in some of our shows, as why is the system doing what it is? Why are certain people saying certain things? Who's really in charge? Who's and it goes to, some people think that there's a domestic elite, there's a global elite, there's an establishment, etc. One of the things that's been on my mind for quite a while is, there is a power structure in this country. There are certain things you are allowed to say. There are things that you are not allowed to say. And once you move out of those bounds of unacceptable discussion, they do come after you. And again, I'm not in any way associated with One Nation, but what happened before the 2019 election? A foreign media company with foreign money hired a double agent, a secret agent, to infiltrate One Nation. They got One Nation to say and do certain things. Those things I don't agree with what they said, but then all of that footage was used by certain media organisations, including the ABC, to discredit One Nation because they were trying to suppress the votes of One Nation before the 2019 election. So that is, domestic and foreign money, and the use of propaganda to basically influence an election outcome. That's what happened then. There are clear examples in the 1990s where, whether it was One Nation then, the CC, or other political groups outside of the mainstream two-party system, where the use of secret agents were used to bring them down from within, or to get dirt on them, or to limit their ability to change the direction of the country. And so I view this piece that was in today's article, in today's AFR, as an attempt to discredit us and to keep the agenda that the power structure, whatever you want to call it, want to keep it on track. Because obviously they want this through. If they can't get this through, this will be a big blow for the powers that be. And this is why they've come up with a hit job. So, the real discussion that Australians need to understand is what you think your country is, like the Matrix. So what you think your country is not what really is going. It's not what is happening. There are organisations, there are individuals who are keeping the country moving in a particular direction, and if you try to alter that direction, they come up. They initially ignore you, but once you become effective, that's when they start to come after you. And the AFR today, and this particular individual who wrote this piece someone said to me, maybe you shouldn't emphasize this article today. This article is so important for the average citizen to understand that Mr. Patrick exposed what's really going on. And by him writing this piece, the way he wrote it, guilt by association, smear, didn't actually look at the facts behind what we were saying. It's clear as to how this power structure works, who is involved, and what their agenda is.
And of course, the point about all of this is that we know that there are people who are now within the parliamentary environment quite twitchy about this cash ban because they've had such a strong negative reaction from the community. You know, thousands and thousands of people have actually put submissions in and phoned up their MPs and expressed their frustration and concern about what's going on, right? So effectively, it's not too surprising that the reaction then is to try and cut it off at the pass, as it were, right? To try and turn off the negative things that are being developed. But the fact of the matter is, you can't just turn off consumers and individuals and households when they've got an idea that something really important is happening and it's actually attacking civil liberties. And that's the issue we're dealing with.
Martin, look, so you make a good point. So it is obviously about civil liberties, but there is obviously a broader agenda. I mean, during the week, I had the opportunity to speak to several people, to several parliamentarians as well as advisors on the phone. And even though I have launched in the last week this post about the Soviet Liberal government, certain Liberals were still willing to talk to me, certain people from the Nationalists were still willing to talk to me, as well as from across the political spectrum. So, I have been told the Liberals are petrified because of the community response. The Liberals have been very uneasy on the backbench because of the response they have got from the public. Obviously, I know that Robbie has been in Parliament this week and he's spoken to people in Labor. Labor has been engulfed by community reaction around this, and obviously, a whole bunch of others, parties as well are getting a lot of feedback in terms of this. So that there is definitely concern about the reaction that we have been able to generate, and what they're trying to do is to ensure that that people don't listen to us anymore. That if you are concerned about this piece of legislation because you have listened to certain people, those people are radical, they're extreme, they're fringe people. Therefore, their concerns have no legitimacy. The official claims of the government about the black economy is all good, even though even though between the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer they can't get the script right. I mean, is this about tax evasion? Is this about illegal criminal activity? How much revenue can they generate? Is this going to actually be effective in actually achieving the objectives? I mean, there's all sorts of questions about the claims of the government and whether they're accurate or not. But then going to broader issues that they obviously don't want those issues raised or discussed, and it's what you've said in multiple shows about classic, them using classic tactics around misdirection. And so obviously this is where when Nassim Kadem at the ABC did her two-piece over 2 weeks, and when she did this piece about negative interest rates, she looked at our show. She asked me point blank, what sources are you looking at? And I sent her the IMF papers, all of the quotations, and I said, it's all public. We didn't make this up. And I've been saying it throughout today on Twitter. Adams and North didn't make this up. Negative interest rates are coming. In the last 24 hours, the ECB cut the interest rates to negative 0.5%. In the last 72 hours, Donald Trump has called for negative interest rates in America. Other countries are doing, like the Japanese, are doing negative interest rates. The RBA has said unconventional policy is coming, and we know they have told the commercial banks that negative interest rates first before QE. So we know that the cash is a problem. So again, not a conspiracy, not extreme, and I was so more disappointed that Andrew Wilkie in the piece basis call this, now did certain people say things that we didn't say? I'm sure they did. I'm sure there were certain members of the public who maybe pushed a conspiracy theory or a particular viewpoint that we didn't express. But on the facts and the quotations we provided in our shows, it is all publicly sourced. There is a global agenda around cash. It is negative interest rates. It has to do with a global debt bubble. They're trying to prevent the biggest depression in world history, and they're about to launch the biggest monetary experiment known to man, and they don't know whether it's going to work or not. That's what's really going on, and the AFR don't want that discussed. And people in Parliament, to a large degree, don't want that discussed. They want the public, dumbed down and ignorant. And obviously, we saw what we saw today.
And it's worth saying, isn't it, John, that the critical thing for our audience and for Australians more generally is to look past that misdirection, look past the misdirection to the fundamental issue that we're dealing here with, which is one, civil liberties, two, the link to negative interest rates and the need to control cash in that environment. Because if cash is not controlled, negative interest rates won't work.
Precisely. I mean, one of the things that surprised me today was just how bad Aaron Patrick did a job of. I mean, because sometimes you can do misdirection in a very smart way and you can fool a lot of people, but this was just so blatantly poorly constructed that it was quite bad how it did it.
So, John, I guess my question to you is, what do you think the impact in Parliament will be of the AFR piece?
Okay, so I have had communication with at least one government MP about this. This MP I know is against the bill, and we'll talk about in our next show about what is happening within the government on this bill. But this MP thought that this was not a useful contribution into the public debate. It will influence people's perspectives on this because there's going to be a script in Parliament, and it's going to happen on both Labor and the government. And the script's going to be, if someone says, I oppose this legislation, someone says, why? For ABC reason. Where did you get that from? Who's been saying that? Oh, I got it from this source. Thing is that, that source has, they're linked to neo-Nazis. They're wholly discredited. Therefore, we're not going to entertain any of your arguments. And they're going to shut down debate, and they're going to basically say, "Okay, we're just going to pass it now." I mean, that is literally the script. I've seen this happen many times in politics. You raise an objection. What's the source of that objection? If that source is linked to something controversial, therefore the objection has no validity, and we're just going to move on and just do what we want to do, and that's what's going to happen. And so now, obviously. The mainstream media in America try these sort of tactics in the 2016 campaign with Trump. And whether you like Trump or not, these tactics were used, and the public saw right through them. And that's why, even though there was a whole host of scandals being pushed around Trump, some real, some false, Trump was still able to get elected. So the key point on this particular issue is, now, I think our audience can see through this. A whole bunch of other people who may have seen this piece may or may not have seen through this. The key point is to know that this is not journalism, this is propaganda to push a particular agenda. People need to ignore the AFR, they need to look through what's really going on, and they cannot give up the fight against Parliament, and they need to apply more pressure to ensure that this does not become law, because they still want this in before the end of the year. We know that a Senate inquiry is coming, so they have to factor that in the timetable, and so it still could be within it could be even next week or halfway through October that the legislation is presented to Parliament, which means we've only got a small window to still mount a opposition to the legislation.
Yeah, and just to underscore a couple of things there, John, the accusation of anti-Semitism and neo-Nazism, right, is absolutely wrong. We have no agenda like that at all, never have done, right? And just throw in that mud, which is what the AFR guy has done, is just trying to discredit. It has no basis in fact at all.
Precisely. I mean, we've never discussed that on this show.
Nope.
And I have travelled around the country with Robbie, and to hand on heart, it's never come up. So so any view that the CEC, and again, we're not members of the CEC, but I can say that, the CEC are not, they don't believe in the Rothschild conspiracy or neo-Nazism, because that hasn't been expressed. And one of the things I will say is, I have gone to 3 or 4 seminars for the CEC, and I've spoken as an independent economist at their events. I've never been scripted. I'm allowed to say what I want. And I have said on multiple occasions when it comes to economic Armageddon and my thesis and what the policy response should be, I've said to the members of the CC, this is where I agree with the CC, this is where we disagree, and you as an organisation have to figure out whether your current position is correct or whether you actually adopt some of my ideas or other people's ideas. So I've told people openly, the CC is wrong on a set of economic propositions, and I've explained why I take that view.
Right, and just to re-emphasise, we are talking here in the interest of the people, right? Because we believe that there's a really important agenda that people need to know about to keep Australia effectively the sort of country that we want it to be.
Exactly, and the AFR is talking in the interest of the elites.
John, thank you very much.
No problems.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. We'll see you next time.